All right, guys, welcome to our first screencast of the year. We're going to talk about European exploration and colonization. We're going to start off with Christopher Columbus. The old rhyme in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He gets a lot of credit for discovering America when he really didn't. He landed in the Caribbean, the island of Hispaniola. He didn't know he was in a new world. He was actually thinking he was in Asia. He thought he was in specifically the Indonesian islands, which is why he named the locals here, the natives, Indians. It's not until 1501 when an Italian sailor, Amerigo Vespucci, comes over, follows Columbus's journal and his notes, realizes that this is not Indonesia, it's not Asia, it's a whole other area, a whole new world, a whole new land. He goes back to Europe, meets up with a German map maker, tells him what he found, and they start plotting out this new map. The map maker writes Vespucci's name down, Amerigo, giving him credit for the discovery, which is why we are now called America. It's for Amerigo Vespucci. On the left here, we have Christopher Columbus, and on the right, we have our namesake, Amerigo Vespucci. But this does set up something called the Columbian Exchange. It is a massive amount of plants, animals, supplies, and ideas being brought back and forth between the Americas and Europe. Things like beans, chocolate, corn, or maize are brought from America to Europe, and things like bananas, cattle, chickens, horses, pigs are brought over from Europe, brought to America. These are all European things that we now use here. Speaking of Europe, again, Columbus sailed for the country of Spain. We're going to talk about some of the other countries later on, but just to get an idea, Spain is right here, next to Portugal, right along the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean. This sends Spain into a massive growth, creating what became known as the Spanish Empire. Early 1400s to 1500s, specifically the late 1400s, 1492, Spain came over here with three main goals. We call them the three G's: God, gold, and glory. Their first objective was to, one, spread Christianity. They brought people over that were called missionaries to do that. And sometimes that, when they were converting natives into Christianity, it was a forced conversion. And I mean forced physical violence, torture, wasn't pretty. They wanted to increase their wealth. They wanted gold. And some of them got so crazy that people got hurt and even killed. But they also set up a economic program called the mercantilism, which is where Spain, the mother country, utilizes all that we have here in order to benefit them. So they drain all the natural resources from us and utilize all the natural resources from this land, this area, and use it to benefit themselves. Now, the other thing that they do is glory, for the expanding the empire, for fame, not necessarily, fortune goes with the gold, but for the fame and for the Spanish Empire, for the king, for King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella. Now, lots of Spanish conquistadors, Spanish soldiers, conquerors actually is the legitimate term, come over and they truly explore and exploit America. Two of the biggest examples are Hernan Cortez and Francisco Pizarro. Cortez comes over in about 1519 and he encounters the Aztec Empire led by Montezuma. Now, the Aztec Empire inhabited much of what is modern-day Mexico and a lot of the rest of Central and some of South America. Now, Cortez realizes their size and their strength and does two things. He, one, allies himself with some of the Aztec enemies for protection, but also he goes to Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec capital city. He goes in and tries to control them from within. It doesn't work. the Aztecs push Cortez and the other Spanish out, but it was too late at that point. Cortez and the other Spaniards brought something with them that they hadn't planned on. They brought diseases, specifically smallpox. And this killed 70% of the Aztecs. It killed or weakened most of them. So later on, Cortez is able to return and overthrow the entire Aztec Empire and almost leave it in ruins. Pizarro has a similar encounter with the Inca Empire, led by a man named Atahualpa. Now, the Inca were in South America, specifically modern-day Peru, and they don't really waste time in trying to be their friends. They straight up attack. They attack the Inca, capture the Emperor Atahualpa. Now, Atahualpa tries to bribe the Spanish for his freedom. He gives them gold and silver. This truly gets Pizarro's greed going crazy, and he demands more. Atahualpa doesn't have any more or won't give him any more. Pizarro thinks he's trying to corrupt and overthrow the Spanish Empire, accuses him of this, and Atahualpa is promptly executed by strangulation. And the Inca Empire pretty much was overwhelmed and destroyed between battles and, again, smallpox diseases. The natives over here had never encountered European diseases like this, so they had no immune system to fight it off. So any kind of disease, even the common cold that we have now, would have killed hundreds of people. This just happened to be one of the big ones, being smallpox. As word spreads, more European countries start to come over here, but not just to explore. They're looking for something called the Northwest Passage. They're trying to find a way to get through this area over to Asia, because that was the original goal. That was what Columbus was originally going for. He wanted to sail to Asia. He wanted a water route to Asia to trade with Indonesia, China, Japan, and that's still what a lot of people wanted. So the big countries that are getting into this right now is, again, we had Spain over here. There's France. There's England, the United Kingdom, which is Britain, England, later on becomes the United Kingdom. And the Netherlands, the Dutch, which are teeny tiny right there. But you see they're all kind of right here. And there's a lot of fighting between all of them throughout history. But we're only going to worry about this small little piece. So I'm going to go over a couple of few explorers. First one is Jacques Cartier. He came over in 1536. He was a Frenchman. He sailed up the St. Lawrence River to modern-day Montreal, Canada. Claims it in the name of France. More explorers, more Frenchmen follow after him, and they establish this area as New France. Henry Hudson is an Englishman. He's British, but he sailed to the country of Holland. He goes to the coast of modern-day New York onto what is now Hudson River. And he claims all that land for the Dutch. Now, why did Cartier and Hudson go up these two rivers? Well, let's look. Here is the St. Lawrence River, right up in here with this first arrow. The Hudson River goes right up in here, right up through into New York. They're both looking for the Northwest Passage, and they both realize that that's not it. There is no such thing. We know that now. But they were trying to find a water route through the continent to get to the other side. They didn't realize how vast North America and South America are. So the Spanish are in the southern part of the United States, southern part of the Americas. The French are coming in, and the French actually find their way down to Florida, and they set up a place called Fort Caroline here, which is modern-day Jacksonville. The Spanish see this, and they don't like it because at this point, the Spanish and the French really don't like each other. So Pedro Menendez de Avilas, one of the admirals of the Spanish Armada, the Spanish Navy, they built the fort at St. Augustine here in 1565, the next year, to say, no, this is our territory, our land, and we don't want the French here. And they force the French out, violently force the French out of Florida. By 1585, the British are getting in on it. They're like, all right, there's something good over here, something good going on. So a man named Sir Walter Raleigh, he's an English nobleman, comes over and tries to establish the first British colony here in America. He goes to an island off the coast of modern-day North Carolina, which we call Roanoke. He tried this colony twice. The first time, it didn't work well. They weren't prepared. So they came back that was in 1585. They came back in 1587, and they got here too late. It was too close to winter. John White, one of the leaders, left England to try to get back, to get more supplies to come back in time. But at that point, a war had broken out, and he was unable to get back to America for 3 years. By the time he does, the settlement is gone. Everyone had vanished. And a hurricane came up, pushing him back out to sea. And at that point, they were out of supplies. They had to return to England. To this day, nobody knows what happened to the Roanoke colony. There's a lot of theories. There's a lot of research going on right now. But there's nothing conclusive. We don't know 100% what happened to the Roanoke colony. Here's a quick map showing you some of the routes. You see the red line right here belongs to the Dutch. That would be Henry Hudson's route, going up here to New York. The blue would be British. That's Sir Walter Raleigh and another man named John Cabot. The French, Jacques Cartier, coming across over here down the St. Lawrence. And then the Spanish, first being Columbus. Then we see Cortez, Coronado, and Pizarro. All right, so that's the basic layout of where all these Europeans went in the Americas. But it sets up something so much bigger. Now, specifically the Spanish, they colonize a lot of the Caribbean islands, which is why a lot of those Caribbean islands, the main language spoken there is Spanish. But the Spanish do something that's really not so very nice, and they start using natives as slave labor. But it doesn't work because of the diseases. The slaves start dying off at tremendous rates, and a lot of them run away. And this is when the Spanish specifically start bringing over African men and women as slaves. And this actually transforms the Columbian Exchange into what's called the triangular trade. So let's take a look at this route. We start off here in Europe. They bring manufactured goods, guns, weapons, supplies down to Africa. They trade with local tribes there in exchange for their enemy tribes as slaves. They bring the slaves over to America. They unload them here, put them to work, growing, mining, harvesting, and they bring all that raw material, sugarcane, cacao, they bring maize, corn, they bring that all back over to Europe and start the whole process again. This is the triangular trade, and this trade will continue pretty much up until 1860, end of the Civil War. All right, so that's it for Unit 1, guys. Make sure to keep going through your notes, your 4-column graphic organizer, and do your reading assignment.